back to our podcast, Psych, and this is our second episode, Ethical or Unethical.
We are the Cores. I'm Nithya.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Anvita, and today we're going to be talking about ethics and how they tie with medicine.
To jump into our topic, ethics is a very general term for moral principles.
More specifically, principles that govern a person's behavior and conduct activity.
So, ethics follow a term of morality, which is society's standards for how someone should act and traits that make someone good or bad. So there are three subterms. There is descriptive ethics, meta-ethics, and normative ethics.
So descriptive ethics is a scientific study of morality, and it talks about certain types of beliefs and judgments and actions. And meta-ethics are the analysis of concepts and terms, and it deals more with the meaning of them.
The last term is called normative ethics. It's really the analysis of what standards and moral judgments should be. It reflects on the kind of actions and principles that will promote moral behavior.
So now we're going to talk about the preamble or the introduction to the Code of Ethics. And I'm just going to read out what exactly it is. The medical profession has long subscribed to a body of ethical statements developed primarily for the benefit of the patient. As a member of this profession, a physician must recognize responsibility to patients first and foremost, as well as to society, to other health professionals, and to self. The following principles, adopted by the American Medical Association, are not laws, but standards of conduct, which define the essentials of honorable behavior for the physician.
So to make sure that each physicians follow the standards of conduct, they take the Hippocratic Oath. So they take it after graduating medical school, and basically they promise to follow this oath in all scenarios. In the oath, the physician pledges to prescribe only beneficial treatments according to his abilities and proper judgment, to refrain from causing harm or hurt, and to live an exemplary personal and professional life.
So now I want to talk about the 4 principles of ethics. To start out, I'm going to talk about autonomy, which is to respect patients' right of self-determination. The definition from the National Institute of Health reads as, every person has the right to make decisions regarding his or her health autonomously, even if these decisions appear irrational to third parties. It just essentially means the freedom to act independently. And anyone making decisions is informed, and they're all voluntary, and the patient has the capacity to act intentionally and with understanding without any outside influences.
Okay, and then the second main principle of ethics is beneficence, which is the duty to do good. So basically, a physician is obligated to act for the benefit of patients and support a number of moral rules to protect and defend rights of others, prevent harm, remove harm, rescue people in danger, and etc. So whatever the doctor does has to be in the patient's best interest. So typically, a physician should consider these questions like, will this option resolve these patients' medical problem? Is it proportionate to the scale of the medical problem? Is this option compatible with this patient's individual circumstances? And is this option and its outcomes in line with the patient's expectations of treatment? And you just basically is saying that a physician cannot do evil or harm. They have to prevent evil and harm, remove it, and promote good.
The third ethic is justice, which is basically to treat all people equally and equitably. So it's divided into 3 sections according to the Medical Protection website. First, it's distributive justice, which is fair distribution of limited healthcare resources. Basically, not prioritizing anyone. The second one is rights-based justice, which is respecting people's rights and not being discriminative towards people. And there's also legal justice, which is basically being respectful of the law. And all in all, this ethic just basically is fair treatment for everybody, with exceptions to age, if they're too young to perform a certain medical surgery, or experience or physical conditions.
So the fourth one, the last main principle of ethics, is non-maleficence, which is the duty to not do bad. It's kind of similar to beneficence, but we'll talk about the differences later. Non-maleficence is basically the dictum primum non nocere, which means first do no harm, and it's the physician's obligation to not harm the patient. So there's 5 specific rules to it. Do not kill, do not cause pain or suffering, do not incapacitate, do not cause offense, and do not deprive others of the goods of life. So the physician needs to weigh the benefits against burdens of all interventions and treatments and to choose which are inappropriately burdensome and the best course of action for the patient. And so, example, this is similar to justice, but like if you find out your patient is a murderer, right, you have to treat him and provide him with good treatment because it's not the physician's job to deal out judgment and law. So the difference between non-maleficence and beneficence is that beneficence means performing a deed that benefits someone, and non-maleficence is refraining from doing something that harms or injures someone. So, for example, feeding someone at a soup kitchen is an example of beneficence, but preventing a patient from taking a harmful medication is an example of non-maleficence.
So now we're going to talk about specific cases where ethics come into play. And I want to start this out with a disclaimer of like, we are in no means a medical expert, but we did our research and this is just our personal input. So to start out, Anvita, you want to go?
Sure, so I'm just going to read out this case for y'all and just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Your mother calls you and asks you to help with a major family decision. Your maternal grandfather is 70 years old and has been diagnosed with a condition that will kill him sometime in the next 5 years. He can have a procedure that will correct the disease and not leave him with any long-term problems, but the procedure has a 10% mortality rate. He wants to have the procedure, but your mother does not want him to. How would you help mediate this issue? So how I would answer this is that if her father does want the procedure, I feel like it's his right to like be like, yes, I want it, you know? I feel like the mother decision, yeah, like she's allowed to have like a say, but also like she kind of also doesn't, because at the end of the day, it's his right.
I think that like if this plays on to autonomy, where like it's the patient's right to self-determination, but we also gotta consider this is a 70-year-old grandfather, right? Is he in the right state of mind? Is he in the right state of mind? Does he know what's the procedure? Does he know like the risks and consequences that might happen? Is he fully aware that this may kill him or may not kill him? You know
That's
what I mean?
my next point. I was gonna say
Sorry.
that. No, it's totally fine. I was like, the physician or like the person mediating the actual procedure should actually like explain like the whole process, what can happen, what can't happen, what's like most likely to happen. Kind of like prepare for like the worst and for the best as well. So like the grandfather can kind of get like some sort of idea instead of it just being like, oh, you might die, sorry. Like that's like that's not like the right way to like approach.
I think everyone in this scenario needs to be informed of exactly like what's happening, what it is. Like, yeah, what you're saying like depends on the person.
But I think it also considers like I said this already, but like if the grandfather has like Alzheimer's, dementia, is he really capable of making that decision for himself?
So would you say it depends on the condition as well?
It depends on the condition of the patient. Like it depends on the mental condition and physical condition of the patient. Because if, for example, like I know this case doesn't say that, but if he has another complication that might make the surgery even more risky than it is, you know what I mean? That lowers the chances of mortality a little bit.
But like if, for example, the grandfather does have dementia, would that be the mother's, or sorry, in this case, the daughter's decision to be like, oh, he has Alzheimer's, we shouldn't do this, or the physician's?
I believe it's the physicians. Like the mother is going to have like, the mother doesn't want her dad to die. Like, she's going to have like, I don't think she's going to want him to get the surgery like at all.
It's definitely from a more emotional standpoint.
Exactly.
Versus the physician would have like a more practical, logical kind of standpoint.
I feel like the physician would like consult with their like peers and everything.
Yeah.
And get another input.
Definitely.
But isn't it the mother as a guardian? Because if the grandfather can decide, then the mother is the next person who decides. Like you kind of, as a physician, you kind of have to follow.
Oh yeah. There's that.
The right what the patient wants. So
Well, if the patient isn't capable of making a decision, the next person is what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that didn't go through, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to. I think Nitya's right. Like because you got Nitya and Vita's right. That you, because as a physician you're more practical about it. You should like explain like that he has a higher chance of surviving with the surgery than without. Yeah. Okay, Nietzsche, do you want to move on to your case?
No, we have to be the sample expert.
We do?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna read out the sample expert's answer, basically to see if like we us as high school students are kind of like seeing this from a correct standpoint. So I would explain that if my grandfather does the procedure, he is acknowledging the possibility that the procedure might kill him, even though the chances are quite low. I would also make sure my mother understands that if my grandfather refuses the procedure, he will inevitably die from the disease at any point in the next 10 years, which still involves a degree of perhaps unsettling uncertainty. Initially, I will emphasize that no matter what, the choice is ultimately my grandfather's. As long as he understands the risks, he can give a reasonable consent, and his final decision is informed. Then he has the legal and moral right to the decision-making responsibility for his own treatment. In summary, I start by asking everyone to state their opinion clearly. Then I would steelman both sides of the argument. Next, I would make sure the consequences of each opinion are understood by everyone. Finally, I would emphasize the importance of allowing my grandfather to make the final decision. So we were like kind of right.
I feel like we kind of went off topic. Like I feel like we answered what everyone would do in that situation, not exactly the daughter. But I feel like, yeah, that's what anyone would do.
Yeah.
Okay, next case. So I'm going to read out the question to you guys again. This one's a pretty short one. If you have the choice of giving a transplant to a If you have the choice of giving a transplant to a successful elderly member of the community or a 20-year-old drug addict, how do you choose?
I like this question.
Me too.
Yeah, okay.
What do you think?
I said that you couldn't choose based on your own personal bias. Like a young person might have a longer life versus an elder person's like already lived their entire life. Or you can't assume the fact that the young kid who's like a drug addict is going to continue using drugs and like, oh, he shouldn't get a transplant because he'll just ruin the organ. Like, you can't assume that. So I think when you're choosing, you need to get rid of your bias, first of all. You need to be like completely unbiased, like they're both valid people. And I think that you need to choose based on who has the higher probability to live with the transplant. Like, if they obviously need the transplant for something, and like if they get it, will it help them? Like, are they both a match for it? Like, do they both know what's going on? I think everyone just needs to stay informed, and I think anyone who like choosing between one of them, I think is determined by whichever one has a higher probability of living or accepting the transplant.
I think it also plays into like who's high up on the transplant list.
Oh yeah.
Because physicians follow, there's a certain transplant list.
Yeah.
And, I mean, unless they're both emergencies, right? Then you kind of have to play with who has a high probability of living. But whoever's on the transplant list higher, technically, is, like, more of the justice principle to give it to the person who's on it, who's been on the transplant list longer.
Obviously, like, with the justice ethic, we should be treating both of these individuals, like, equally.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be, like, just because the 20-year-old drug addict is a drug addict, there would be, like, less attention or less emphasis on, like, trying to help this person.
I agree. And the sample expert answer. I'm going to say this in, like, steps because that's how they formatted it. So the first thing the physician would do, or doctor, is they would ensure that both patients are matched to the transplant. We all agreed on that. And to find out both patients' conditions and what led them to needing a transplant. And which one is more likely to recover and gain the most from the transplant. And yeah, I think we said this in Invita's case, like seeking out other healthcare workers and just like the board and everything to get a bigger input on what's happening. And overall, the decision will be made non-judgmentally and based on which patient will be able to have a stronger recovery from the transplant.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. We definitely hit a lot of those points. So.
Yeah.
What about the patient who's not get the transplant?
I think that they would the doctor would ensure that they understand that they're not receiving the transplant, and that doesn't mean they're going to stop treatment or anything, or they're going to stop looking for ways to improve their condition, but they're still on the list. Yeah.
Makes sense to me. Okay, so my case, also relatively short. A 12-year-old boy is diagnosed with a terminal illness, in this case malignancy. he asked the doctor about his prognosis. His parents requested the doctor not to tell him the bad news. So what should the doctor do in this situation? So this kind of plays into the autonomy principle of right of parents' self-determination. So first, I would evaluate the maturity of this kid. Is he mature enough to understand his terminal illnesses and what it would do to him and how it would affect him? Like, his mortality rate is kind of low.
Mm-hmm.
Would he be able to handle the news without like being a kid about it?
Accepting the consequences as well.
But as a human, he has a right to know about his illness, right? Because he is a patient, not his parents. But also, I think another thing to consider is sometimes there's like specific reasons that the parents don't want the kids to know, like religious reasons. In some religions, it's like better to let the patient die, like without being scared, like more naturally, kind of thing. So I would consider that, but ultimately, I think that the son has the right to know. So obviously, I'll talk to the parents first about their reasons, make sure that the kid's mature enough, because obviously if he's not mature enough, then I think, you can't tell him like the full prognosis.
But what if like the doctor themselves are really religious?
The doctor?
Yeah. That's like personal bias. Like,
you can't let
them adhere to
exactly.
You cannot not let your personal bias affect it. Yeah. But if the kid is mature enough, and the kid wants to know, it's his right to know. So obviously,
but how would you determine if the kid's mature enough?
There's like levels. Like you can basically when you go to a hospital, right, and you have a patient, you take a history and you have a conversation with the patient. So history is basically like you find out what the patient, like their medical status, how they've been feeling the past couple of days, etc. And during this conversation, you can kind of tell the maturity level. Like if they're thrashing around, if they're making jokes, stuff like that, you obviously know, oh, they're not mature enough to handle the news, right? But if they're like calm, collected, they talk to me like, they respect me.
Very surface level though.
No, but like how
I would be really calm and collected around someone I don't know, and then around you I can be a completely different person.
Well, yeah, but in this scenario, like if they're crying and stuff like that.
But
like
I feel like crying or not crying, like I would want to know like what's about to happen to me or what my condition is.
We're 16. We're all like nearly adults. We have a right to know.
Yeah, but like would we say the same about like a 4-year-old?
I believe that. Oh yeah.
4-year-old is different, but the case is probably a 12-year-old
I feel
boy,
like
right?
this is a 12-year-old boy. Like he's almost a teenager. He has the right to know what's going on with his life.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, it's not his parents' life. And I think the doctor in the situation should talk to his peers as well and get input and to inform, like to ask the parents why do you not want to tell your son?
But what would they do with that reasoning?
No, but
like
sometimes
getting to know why, like how would that help?
Sometimes if there's actual reasons, like specific reasons, the doctor can choose personally, I think if you don't tell the whole prognosis, it's kind of like lying to your patient, right? So you either tell it or you don't tell it at all.
But you have an obligation to your patient, not your patient's parent. No?
Yeah, but again, it depends on like the patient's state of mind.
But like, don't the parents have like a say, like
because also this is a kid, right? His guardians are his parents.
That's what I think as well.
So the guardians have an input. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like they need to because he's like a minor.
Yeah, and a lot of same thing with surgeries, right? You have to ask the parent for permission on the surgery.
Yeah, but like, what does that have to do with this?
Wait, yeah, I think we're kind of going away from.
Do you want to read the
telling him the bad news?
Expert answer and then like see what we think about it?
For sure.
Wait, do you want to have a consensus first?
A consensus?
I think we all agree that the kid has a right to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But would you tell them or not?
That's not a doctor's right, no?
No, that's not a doctor's
right.
I
don't know.
What is it?
Enough to make
what's the question?
What should the doctor do? Tell the kid or not? What do you think?
I think like it should be discussed with the parents and the kid all together.
Yeah,
I feel like privately doing it is obviously gonna like be like, oh, but we don't want to tell him, like, oh, well, I'm sorry, but you have to. It's like kind of like.
And at the end of the day, the kid's gonna die. Like.
But does the patient?
These poor kids.
But do the parents want the kid to die like not feeling scared?
Well, I kind of understand it from a parent's perspective. Like knowing your 12-year-old kid is gonna die.
Do you want your kid to be scared?
If I found out as a 12-year-old that I had a terminal illness, like your entire life's gonna be crushed.
But then the aspect of like positivity and hope also comes in.
Just a very mature thing, a very mature outlook.
Yeah.
Because I feel like even at this time in our lives, if one of us got a terminal illness,
Knock on wood.
we would all like, no,
we
would change people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As personalities, you know.
So I understand the parent's point of view, but as a doctor,
is it even his right to go against the parent's wishes?
Depends on age, doesn't it?
Well, the parent, isn't it if you're not 18, you don't have a right?
Yeah.
How does it work in therapy, though?
well, therapy, like, it's confident. There's a thing of patient confidentiality, right? So because in therapy, your patient is not the parent, you cannot really tell anything. Like, there's a certain level of confidentiality and trust you need to keep with your patient.
But, sorry, in this case, the patient's not the parent either.
Yeah, but this is not a sense of confidentiality because the parent knows first,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Like, you can't tell other people about the kid's thing.
Okay.
But okay, so let me read the sample answer and then we can like talk about it more.
Yes.
This is kind of long. Wait 1 second. Okay,
You can just say this part. Wait.
I'll just read the whole thing.
Cool.
In this scenario, the role I have as a physician is to decide whether I should listen to the parent and not disclose the prognosis to the patient or to tell the truth. The first step I would take would be to collect information. It's important to know all the variables and remain non-judgmental before making a final decision. Starting with the parents, I will ask them why they don't want the patient to know about the prognosis. They might, for instance, thinking that hearing that prognosis would negatively influence their son's physiological well-being, which they will want to preserve as much as possible in his final days. From the patient's perspective, his main concern is to know the truth. To advance his inquiry, I will need to assess the child's maturity. In other words, I will have to be able to predict with reasonable accuracy how hearing the news will affect his physiological health. It isn't fair to assume that the child is incapable of processing the news just because his parents are averse to the prospect of him knowing or because he is young. To assess his maturity, I will ask him about how he is feeling and what he thinks of his condition. It will be important to understand what he already knows before I decide if I should reveal other critical details. I have 2 available options: to go against the patient's wishes and to tell the kid, or to respect the patient's wishes. To respect the parent's wishes. If my assessment of the child's maturity reveals that he can understand and appreciate his situation, then I'll tell the child. It's important to reveal the truth to the child in this case, since this knowledge has health implications. While a physician should respect admonitions and the wishes of parents of children in a medical context, there are situations where siding with the child is obligatory, as our health is my primary concern. In some way, I would assess the child's capacity by asking questions about what he knows about his health, probe the parents for information on why they think he should be told, and then based on this information, make a decision about revealing the prognosis.
Wow.
Okay, like, that's a lot of points, but basically assess the child's maturity, ask the parents why they don't want the child to know, and see if what the best decision would be.
Ultimately, the doctor does decide based on.
Yeah, the doctor does.
But they also take like the parents' reasoning into account.
Yeah.
And
Just
the child-
along the lines of
The
what
child
we said.
knows the condition, right?
Well,
It just said that, so I think that's the kind
yeah, if they do understand it.
of. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we're gonna do some other cases.